Merciful Father, thank you for inviting each of us to join in your work of building the kingdom of love, justice, and peace. Draw us closer to you in prayer as we discern your call in our families and communities. Send us forth to encounter all whom you love, those not yet born, those in poverty, those in need of welcome. Inspire us to respond to the call to faithful citizenship during election season and beyond. Help us to imitate your charity and compassion and to serve as models of loving dialogue. Teach us to treat others with respect, even when we disagree, and seek to share your love and mercy. We ask this through Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. This is the prayer that the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops have decided to end the new introduction to forming consciences for faithful citizenship, a call to political responsibility from the Catholic Bishops of the United States. This document, it's a 43-page document. It's available as a PDF online, or you can purchase a pamphlet of it. 43 pages. It goes through basically how we as Catholics should view policies that are being enacted in our country. So I'm Allie Marie. I live in Michigan in the United States. So this is an election year, but the focus really goes beyond elections. It goes into how this, should play out in our day-to-day life. So the bishops really call us to focus on having a consistent life ethic, which I actually recently read a book called Resisting the Throwaway Culture by Charles Camosy. I reviewed it. I do book reviews on the last Thursday of every month. And it's all about focusing on the common good and focusing on protecting our common home, which is the earth. So the bishops actually state in the introduction here that they say, our focus is not on party affiliation, ideology, economics, or even competence and capacity to perform duties, as important as such issues are. Rather, we focus on what protects or threatens the dignity of every human life. The overall structure of what they go through in this document is built on the 4 basic principles of Catholic social doctrine, which is the dignity of the human person and the common good, which are the 2 major ones. You'll hear those 2 referenced over and over throughout this video and throughout the document, subsidiarity and solidarity. The Catholic Church has demonstrated these aspects of social doctrine by serving those in need. They've quoted educating the young, serving families in crisis, caring for the sick, sheltering the homeless, helping women who face difficult pregnancies, feeding the hungry, welcoming immigrants and refugees, reaching out in global solidarity, and pursuing peace. So, Catholics establish hospitals, right? We have a lot of history in helping people and putting the vulnerable first and foremost in our world. The focus that they go through in this document is not so much on the how, but rather the outcome. There are a lot of different means to achieve an end, and so that is why it's so important for us to form our consciences effectively to know who we're casting a ballot for. They stated in the Catholic tradition, responsible citizenship is a virtue and participation in political life is a moral obligation. In the United States, obviously, like this last election, we felt like it was the lesser of 2 evils. And again, I feel a lot of Catholics are feeling that this election is choosing between the lesser of 2 evils, or rather focusing on abortion and eliminating a lot of the other aspects. They talk a lot about how, as Catholics, we stand for protecting the dignity of the human life from conception to the moment of natural death. So they go through all kinds of different aspects of how we can promote the dignity of the human person and the common good. Not so much the how, but how we should be, like what ends we should be looking for as Catholics. And they go through a whole slew of things. It's migration, xenophobia, racism, abortion, global conflict, care for creation, poverty, the death penalty, torture, genocide, working conditions, just wages, gun violence, gender ideologies, protecting the family structure, including marriage between one man and one woman, and so much more. It's divided into 3 parts, and part 3 summarizes everything into 10 points. It's 3 pages of the document. It's the last 3 pages. So if you're going to look this document up and read it, I would recommend, it's pretty dense. I was focused a lot, and, if you were to look through this, like, I have highlights and underlines through the entire thing. So I was really focused and reading it, trying to understand every aspect. It took me about an hour for every 10 pages, and I'm normally a pretty fast reader. So if you don't have that kind of time and you're just looking for summations, I'm obviously going to go through them here in this video and reference back throughout parts 1 and 2, drawing in different quotes that stood out to me and different just aspects that the bishops chose to focus on. Or you can just go and read that summation and kind of allow, maybe like something will stand out for you. Part 2 kind of dissects each of those aspects particularly, so maybe one stands out to you want to reference back. But they do begin part 3 by stating, not all issues are equal. These 10 goals address matters of different moral weight and urgency. Some involve intrinsically evil acts which can never be approved, while others involve affirmative obligations to seek the common good. So basically, things that we need to not do and things that we need to do. And that is what we'll be focusing on today. Be sure to subscribe, like this video if you're interested in joining this whole journey and joining the conversation in the comments. Definitely get a lot of stuff going on around here, so just try to keep it respectful, and I would love to dialogue with you. The first goal that the bishops reference here is restricting and bringing an end to the destruction of unborn children through abortion and providing women in crisis pregnancies the supports they need to make a decision for life. I follow a slew of different organizations on Instagram and Facebook that really focus on providing the woman with money so that she can keep her baby. A lot of times we focus on adoption instead of abortion, but ultimately a woman should not have to decide between killing her baby and giving the baby away. As Catholics, we need to come together and support these women that are in crisis pregnancies, that have an abusive partner, that just don't feel like they can do it. It was sudden, they didn't know what to do, and help them monetarily or otherwise in whatever way we're capable of, and move forward with that. Now, the importance in abortion is the right to life is the fundamental right that makes all other rights possible. So Catholics are focusing a lot on abortion, and ultimately, we don't just want to make abortion illegal. We want to make abortion unthinkable. Understanding the science behind abortion, understanding that mother-baby bond, understanding all of these different things, and meeting people with love and compassion and sympathy instead of judgment, instead of making them feel like they are lesser than or anything like that. We have to focus on how can we support the woman and the family structure, which goes into another goal. With the fact that abortion is an overarching policy in this election, the bishops did make the statement where they said, a Catholic cannot vote for a candidate who favors a policy promoting an intrinsically evil act if the voter's intent is to support that position. At the same time, a voter should not use a candidate's opposition to an intrinsic evil to justify indifference or inattentiveness to other important moral issues involving human life and dignity. There may be times when a Catholic who rejects a candidate's unacceptable position, even on policies promoting an intrinsically evil act, may reasonably decide to vote for that candidate for other morally grave reasons. So all of that is just to say there can be a Catholic who could vote for Joe Biden, even though he is advocating for abortion. If they have properly formed their consciences, if they have looked at the fact that they agree with affordable health care for all, another thing we'll get into in a minute, if they agree with the new Green Deal, all these different aspects, there might be morally grave reasons that these morally grave policies that they see in President Trump's administration that they think can be rectified within Joe Biden's. And the same thing goes vice versa. Obviously, President Trump is not a man of upstanding character. We know this. But he has advocated for being anti-abortion, for putting pro-life legislature into law. So there could be somebody who sees different aspects of his policies and overturns it. Catholics can be on both sides of the spectrum. Again, it's not so much about the how, it's what the end is. There's a multitude of ways, there's more than one way to skin a cat. We can support a particular person because we support their policies, because we support the way that they're doing the policies, or we could support their policy but not support how they're getting there. So just something to consider when choosing, outside of election year, but choosing who to cast ballot to. The second goal that they talk about is keeping our nation from turning to violence to address fundamental problems. So things such as abortion to deal with unwanted pregnancies, or euthanasia and assisted suicide to deal with illness or disability, destruction of human embryos in the name of research, the death penalty to deal with criminals, war to deal with international disputes, all of these things. Our number one view as Catholics should be to promote peace. And while the just war theory is permissible, just war is okay as long as we have exhausted all other options. And so we really want a commander-in-chief who is going to be promoting peace, who's not going to be trigger happy when it comes to shooting down anybody. We definitely want to be protecting innocent lives, and any type of targeting of innocent lives in war is absolutely intrinsically evil. The third goal that they go into is protecting the fundamental understanding of marriage as the lifelong and faithful union of one man and one woman, rejecting false gender ideologies, and providing better support for family life morally, socially, and economically. Pope Francis stated, "The removal of sexual difference creates a problem, not a solution." And according to paragraph 2358 of the Catechism, we still must fight against that unjust discrimination against those who experience deep-seated homosexual tendencies, because we must accept them with respect, compassion, and sensitivity. That's with anybody who might have a belief or tendency that's outside of what we would believe to be good in the Catholic faith. All of our experiences come together and formulate how we decide to be. But ultimately, we as Catholics, when we're looking at who to cast a ballot for, we want that protection of the fundamental understanding of the importance of the family structure. Going into that too, on how to attain that end, we have to be examining policies on taxes, work, divorce, immigration, and welfare. They should all focus on helping families stay together and allow poor families to live in dignity. So as far as welfare goes, they did put a stipulation in there stating that such assistance should be provided in a manner that promotes eventual financial autonomy. So creating a system where somebody's going to stay on welfare for 20 years or 30 years or longer is not sustainable. So Pope Francis is not advocating for a populist society. He's not advocating for socialism. But we do need to be considering, how can we support the poor? How can we help people get out of their situations? A lot of times there are addictions involved. There's just unhealthy mindsets, unhealthy emotional behavior, and so sometimes counseling is a good means to reach that. So how can we provide that? And looking at healthcare kind of comes into some of that as well. Fourth goal is to achieve comprehensive immigration reform that offers a path to citizenship, treats immigrant workers fairly, prevents the separation of families, maintains the integrity of our borders, respects the rule of the law, and addresses the factors that compel people to leave their own countries. A lot of these goals are going to end up interacting with each other, because having a consistent life ethic, it sounds just like that. It may sound simple, but really we have to be really scrupulous and prudent in how we're examining all of these policies. It would be easy to just say, oh yeah, we need to address the factors that compel people to leave their own countries. Human trafficking is a huge issue, and they talk about it in this document about how terrible it is. And that's one of those intrinsically evil things. I think we can all come together and say that is a bad thing. But I was about to say other than those who participate in it. But I think even they, deep down, they know what they are doing is wrong. And there is a level of guilt that ends up coming with that. But I'll digress from that for now. But global solidarity, going into how the Catholic faith, how Catholic social doctrine goes beyond our local mindset, and it thinks globally. which brings me into point 5. The fifth goal is to overcome poverty and hunger locally and abroad and ensure access to and choice in education, decent work at fair living wages, adequate assistance for the vulnerable in our nation. So overcoming poverty. St. John the 23rd taught each of us has the right to life, to bodily integrity, and to the means which are suitable for the proper development of life. These are primarily food, clothing, shelter, rest, medical care, and finally, the necessary social services. So as human beings, we are social beings, and we are definitely, like, that ties into poverty. Pope Benedict XVI taught love for widows and orphans, prisoners, and the sick and needy of every kind is as essential to the church as the ministry of the sacraments and preaching the gospel. Taking care of those who are suffering emotionally, financially, that should be at the heart of what we want to see in policy. That's not to say that a socialist society is, the church actually does not, it speaks out against socialist, the socialist mentality in a socialist society, because it doesn't promote people to feel that they are working in a just way, that it doesn't give fulfillment in the same way that earning your own money does. And when we start looking at, that full dependency, there is a level of self-fulfillment that ends up being diverted. And so talking about all of this, there's a way to come together, which goes into, it's the 8th goal that talks about encouraging everybody to work together to these goals. True leadership is going to help people and make people want to work together in order to help overcome the poverty and the hunger and the loneliness that so many people feel, and truly finding that sense of community that we can have in the United States. 6th goal is providing health care while respecting human life, human dignity, and religious freedom in our healthcare system. So any type of contraceptive or abortion mandate within healthcare endangers the rights of conscience and should definitely be opposed. I did a video a while ago when they did the birth control mandate, and it's just not... Every company, every individual, every employer should have the option to obey their conscience, because by providing somebody with that, we as Catholics feel that we are sinning. It is considered a sin to enable sin. And so we have to be able to stay accountable to ourselves when we feel that our salvation could potentially be endangered. Goal 7 is to oppose policies that reject prejudice, hostility toward immigrants, religious bigotry, and other forms of unjust discrimination. I will say one of the things that I was looking for in this document was, okay, so they talked a lot about immigration, a lot about, border patrol things. I was like, well, is this for legal immigration or illegal immigration? Because they just keep saying immigrants. And obviously, authorized immigrants are great. But there is a line in here that says immigrants, authorized or unauthorized. So when we, every human being is a human person, and obviously if somebody crosses the border and they are caught with a bunch of drugs and this and that, obviously they need to be detained. But when you have a child cross the border without a parent, or with an uncle, or whatever it looks like, the whole goal is to keep that child in safety and to not be separating families. The detainment should only be in cases of necessary implementation of our laws and our rules to promote public safety. But as far as simply just separation, that should be something that we strongly oppose as Catholics. And I think a lot of the conversation right now ends up being he said, she said, oh, well, that's not going on at the border. But as the United States Catholic bishops understand, and as a lot of people understand, there is some intrinsically evil actions going on at the border. I'm not going to get into them right now. I think you've heard of them or you haven't. I don't know. If you really want me to do a video on it, let me know. But that is a major thing in our country today that needs to be addressed. Goal 8 is to encourage families, community groups, economic structures, and government to work together to overcome poverty, pursue the common good, and care for creation with full respect for individuals and groups and their right to address social needs in accord with their basic moral and religious convictions. So that point kind of summarizes everything else. As I said, I kind of referenced it earlier. It's basically just encouraging everybody to come together to work toward that common good, to care for our common home, which is the earth, and again, like, that doesn't mean you have to support the new Green Deal. Like, you can. That if you feel that that's the best way for us to care for our common home, go for it. Support it. Like, go out there. But if you feel there's another way to do it, you look at, like, Black Lives Matter, defund the police. That's one way to end police brutality. Now, not everybody agrees that that's the best way of doing it, but we can all agree that police brutality needs to end. So we have to be coming together as communities to determine what is the best way, what's the best means to achieve this end. And the end that we're looking for is that common good and that care for our common home. Which brings me to goal number 9, moral limits on the use of military force, seeking a responsible and effective response for ending the persecution of Christian and other religious minorities in the Middle East and other parts of the world. Again, this is where, like, just war is permissible, but as a final resort, and we just want to be sure that we're having those moral limits, that we are advocating for decreasing nuclear weapons, and all of that. So, and finally, goal number 10, join with others around the world to pursue peace, protect human rights and religious liberty, and advance economic justice and care for creation. This is just an overarching thing, right? Like, we want to end violence. We want unity and harmony in the world. We want, like, this polarization that has occurred, the bishops to speak on the media, and the media's responsibility to not drive that polarization, to find ways to bring people together, to try to seek to understand instead of to be understood. So we need to be protecting human rights, and those human rights, they can sometimes get muddled to say, oh, well, I have a right to choose, or I have this right or that right. There just needs to be that proper formation of conscience, which is what this is all about. It's forming consciences for faithful citizenship. That's what this document is all about, and they go into, like, even more detail than I did here, obviously, into how and why the Catholic faith, why our conscience should be formed to understand these ends, to understand why we oppose abortion so vehemently, why we want to, respect every aspect of human dignity from conception to the moment of natural death. Why that's so important. I mean, those are intrinsic human rights. And like I had said, I believe that I quoted somewhere in here, they focused on what those human rights looked like, and that was the rest and the shelter and food, clothing, all of those aspects. I'm not sure exactly where it is right now, but we have to be focused on that. Here it is. It was St. John the 23rd, that each of us has the right to life, to bodily integrity, and to the means which are suitable for the proper development of life, which are food, clothing, shelter, rest, medical care. I said those so fast. Food, clothing, shelter, rest, medical care, and the necessary social services. So we need to be focused on finding those ends for people, however that may look, whatever way your conscience finds as the most, like, effective way to reach those ends, and vote for those policies. And if you don't know how to, if you feel like you so want to disengage, that you are just fed up with the political system, we can still reach out to our representatives to help influence outcomes. We can help influence our parties. You can run for office yourself. Join a diocesan effort for advocacy of the dignity of the human life. There is all kinds of different things, because, as they stated, responsible citizenship is a virtue, and participation in political life is a moral obligation. So we have to be involved. We have to understand what's going on in the world, watching the presidential debates, watching, researching what these policies are. There is, the American Solidarity Party, which is founded primarily in Catholic social doctrine. It's very small. It's a write-in ticket. And everyone keeps saying, oh, well, if you do that, a vote third party is a vote for Trump, or a vote third party is a vote for Biden. Like, you're throwing your vote away, but you're voting by your conscience. And that is what's most important. Now, utilizing wisdom and prudence is also important, which is why perhaps your conscience would lead you to vote for one of the major political parties, because perhaps your conscience does tell you that that would be throwing a vote away, and you feel strongly convicted to vote for a certain political party. This whole document is just about not being a single issue voter. It is all about examining every policy. Do not become indifferent or inattentive to other policies that come into play, as they stated, and be paying attention to more than just that hot topic. Although it is heavily weighted. Don't get me wrong, abortion, as they stated, like, the right to life is the fundamental right that makes all other rights possible. And so it is one to be considered with much fervor and focus. Don't get me wrong on that. However, we do still need to be examining those other aspects and condemning somebody for voting for a party that is pro-abortion. As long as they're not actually supporting that as a Catholic, like, as long as you're not actually supporting that pro-choice mentality, it is okay. You can find a way to vote for that candidate because of other morally grave reasons that you feel they are going to promote in a proper way that promotes the common good and protects our common home. I hope that this was a summary enough. I really tried to whittle it down. Oh, it was a really long. I'm really glad that I was able to finish it this week. I spent a lot of time just really focused on wanting to get it done. So let me know what stood out to you. If you learned anything from this, if you absolutely hated everything I had to say, tell me. I'll hear it. Just give me some feedback. Make it constructive at least, please. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks for paying attention, and thanks for your dedication to this political party, because it is not something that is easy. It's not something that's super straightforward. The consistent life ethic is there are a lot of semantics in it, and there's just a lot to develop. So keep working toward it. Keep just forming your conscience, and God will bless you along the way. He will bring people into your life to help make those things clear. Just be seeking Him, and pray that prayer that they say. I'll put it below in the description if you want to copy paste it to a Word document and print it off and put it on your mirror at home or something. It's a really beautiful way to come together and just encourage us to respond to that call to faithful citizenship during election season and beyond, that every interaction that we would have would cultivate the Catholic social doctrine that we should all be striving to implement in our communities. God bless. I pray that God grants you the resources that you need to draw closer to Him and in turn to those around you, and I pray that you're able to make it a great day. We'll talk to you soon.